Welcome to another episode of The Social Issue. My name is Virtualwana. In the past year, this specific brand has managed to remain quite visible in the social investment space. This being even more impressive given the global pandemic and its effect on a number of businesses and their ability or inability to give back. So today we are joined by CSI Manager of one of the biggest retailers in the continent, Shoprite, Lunga Skuman, who will be unpacking a few of the plans they have for the year and so much more. Thank you so much for your time, Lunga.
Viewer, thank you very much for having me.
So, I've been privy to a lot of your stories, given that I'm in the space. I've been getting a few of the big stories, a few of the little stories that you've been doing, but I think our audience does deserve a larger scope of your impact. So I think let's start off by really finding out how supportive Shoprite has been from a CSI perspective in the fight against COVID-19, particularly in the communities that it serves.
Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting and very tough year for all of us, and particularly for the group. The Shoprite Group places a great value on the community it serves. They're at the core of our business. We are committed to acting for change in communities where we operate, and giving the looming hunger crisis, which has been aggravated by the national lockdown, the hard lockdown earlier last year. Yeah. The Shoprite Group intensified its support for communities. One of the key things that we continue to be an issue as we are fighting this pandemic is the issue of hunger. And the group has intensified its efforts around hunger relief. Yeah. For example, we donated about 75 million rands worth of food from our stores. That's just around over 300,000 rands worth of food every single day, going to local community organizations who are serving thousands of people, many people who could not afford to go to work. In fact, most economic activity had closed down. So the pressure on those nonprofits was huge and tremendous. And we saw South Africans stepping up to support others who are in need. And we're so proud that we were able to support those organizations through our surplus food donations of 75 million since the start of the lockdown. We also supported our food gardens. We've got over 128 food gardens in South Africa that we're supporting, and another 450 homestead gardens or gardens at home. We knew that when there was the hard national lockdown, those people could not have access to seedlings. We could not access them to provide training. So we then did a massive rollout of seedlings, thousands of seedlings, not only to projects that are funded by Shoprite, but projects which also needed help. So many people reached out to us and asked for support, and we're able to do that work with our partner, Food and Cheese for Africa, ensuring that people can still grow their own food, particularly in the midst of the lockdown. We also made a decision internally to raise or to increase our fleet of mobile soup kitchens. At the start of the lockdown, we had 19 trucks. Now we've got close to 30 mobile soup kitchens and trailers that are serving a minimum 1,000 people per truck per day. And they go out in communities. We were so proud that those trucks actually went into communities that we did not serve before the lockdown. So they went to the poorest of the poor, the most rural areas. And those men and women really took some time to ensure that everybody has access to the soup. And they committed themselves Monday to Sunday to ensure that people have access to the food and to the soup that we're able to provide to them. So just in the space of the lockdown, just over 3.5 million meals were served in the mobile soup kitchens. Added to that, we will also have a strong focus as a group on ECDs, or early childhood development. And when the schools closed, we knew ECDs would follow. Or in fact, they were also closed. And we have access to over 120 ECDs throughout South Africa. We knew that if those kids don't have access to ECD or to the centers, they won't necessarily have access to their food, which many of them depend on from those centers. So we were able to deliver just over 130,000 meals to the children, to their homes, and to their siblings, to ensure that they do not get, and they're not deprived in a way of any form of access to meals. We also supported the practitioners. Many of them, once the ECDs had closed, we knew they were not going to get fees or any form of payment, for a long period of time. So what we did as a group is to make a decision to try and support them. So we provided them with food vouchers for a good couple of months during the hard lockdown. I think for us, the bigger responsibility was to the sector, because had they not had access to, I guess, that type of support, we were going to lose them. They were going to look for work elsewhere. Therefore, it was important for us to try and retain them into the sector and to retain support for them and the centers that they operate in. Also, part of our work was to help establish an ECD support fund with many other corporates to try and pull together resources to support many ECDs. And that was the role that Shoprite played. We also donated to the Solidarity Fund. We also asked our customers if they wanted to support the fund as well. We received the most donations ever on the Act for Change Fund via our till points for the Solidarity Fund. It shows that South Africans care, South Africans want to help out, and we saw the best of it, in my view, at the height of the lockdown.
100%. I mean, I think you spoke quite vehemently about the changes you had to make in your strategy that you already had, sort of combat and respond to what COVID sort of brought about. Let's talk a little bit about your strategy as a business, your CSI strategy. I mean, prior to the pandemic, I'm sure you had your own, understanding of what it is you wanted to do and what Shoprite is interested in. But what are the new sort of core changes in your strategy going forward into this new normal that we find ourselves in? How have you sort of managed to adapt in that space?
So the Shoprite CSI strategy has not changed or did not change. In fact, if you look at research that's out there, particularly by Trilog, for example, the top areas which were supported in the height of COVID or in response to COVID was food security, it was community development and healthcare, as well as the Solidarity Fund, the top four. And we were, I guess, fortunate that most, if not all of that, sat within our response for COVID and what we're already doing. Food hunger relief still is relevant in COVID and probably will be an issue, one of the biggest issues for communities for the next couple of while, especially if we look at the impact of things like climate change and what the impact of that will look like. So we came into responding with COVID with the right strategy. All we had to do was to dial things down and to try and reach the many people and thousands of people that we don't necessarily reach, in our normal course of business. So definitely we came in quite well in terms of COVID, and we'll continue to innovate and accelerate our efforts around this. Part of the success, in my view, was we were able to leverage from our suppliers. We've got a massive network of suppliers who supply products and services to the group. And many of them, look to us to say, what can we do? What are you guys doing? And how can we, I guess, piggyback off that? For us, it was not necessarily about which brand came on board to support us, but it was the fact that we could offer them an opportunity to interact and support to over 500 nonprofits that the group directly engages with in its CSR initiative. So we came in with the right strategy. We're able to tap into our resources, tap into our network of suppliers, and dial things up and innovate it in response to COVID.
That's fantastic. And I mean, you mentioned sustainability and being sustainable in the core structures you already had to sort of respond. And it was amazing that those pillars were already within your strategy. But as an influencer, I'd say you guys you're humongous, and you've always been quite visible, like I said, in the social investment space. What are your projections for 2021? What do we see Shoprite looking into a little bit more? Do we see you just staying where you are, being a little bit more stronger, or do we see a little bit more of a versatile strategy, versatile idea going into the new year?
I think the task at hand for us as a retailer is to, at one end, balance the rapid reaction and innovation that's needed from us, from our customers under the new normal. Or as the pandemic unfolds itself. There was massive innovation coming from the group, insofar as things like 60/60, which grew tremendously in response to COVID. People needed food delivered to them, and they couldn't go to malls. We also innovated insofar as digital vouchers, where someone can send a voucher from the comfort of their home to someone who needs it the most, limiting the need to travel, and offering a sense of security that someone is going to use the voucher at a Shoprite store and particularly for what they need the most. So it's balancing the new normal and innovating at that level for our customers who depend on us. Then the other, I guess, balance is to ensure that we support vulnerable communities and ensure that they are resilient to weather this pandemic and many others to come. As I said, there's a big issue of climate change and the impact thereof over time in communities and around the issue of food security. And responding to and the communities' and disadvantaged people's, I guess, ability to respond to calamities and disasters over the next couple of while. I do think the need for us to support and ensure that people have access to food will continue in 2022 to 2021, but we need to, and we will continue to look at maybe longer term type of interventions so that we don't respond to now, but how do we equip people to be able to feed themselves beyond the now or post the COVID-19 era, in my view.
100%. Thank you so much for your time, Lunga. I think we've had a great understanding and a great core understanding of what CSI is going to be coming out of Shoprite this year, and perhaps just to understand your pillars a little bit more. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Via. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
For more stories like these, go to www.social-tv.co.za, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on our social mediums.